Welcome to the Pro Football Hall of Fame right here in Canton, Ohio, the most inspiring place on earth for another installment of our awesome Before the Snap series right here in Canton, Ohio. Like I said, at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you've tuned in with us before, thank you so much. You guys are in for another excellent program today. But if this is your first time tuning in, we want to also thank you for tuning in today. You guys are going to learn a lot about careers in the NFL. We're going to talk about it. Maybe you're not a player, maybe you're not a coach in the National Football League or in any sports, but we want to focus in on a specific career in and around the NFL. This program is meant for students in high school, college. If you're a young professional, if you've been in your career 20 plus years, this program is for you. We're going to talk a lot about what it takes to get a career in sports and all the different things you can do with that career. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. As you know, my name is Jake Ray. I'm the Youth and Education Manager right here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The mission here, where I sit today at the Hall, is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. Those values we promote, those are of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, all of which make you a Hall of Famer on the field, get you that bronze bust right here in Canton, Ohio. But they also make you a good son or daughter, a good parent, a good member of your community, and ultimately a great employee wherever you work, whatever organization you're a part of. I'm excited today to see how these values impacted our special guest's career, both in her job today as well as her life, outside of work. Before we get started, I do want to have send some quick thank yous out. First, I'd like to thank our special guest today for everything she does for the game of football and everything for us here at the Hall of Fame. I always say the game of football wouldn't be like it is today without our Hall of Famers' influence. And the same goes for everybody who works in and around the NFL. The game wouldn't be like it is today without their influence. So thank you so much for that. Secondly, I'd like to thank the teachers and administrators who allow us to come into their classroom today. We know it's a weird time and everybody's learning remotely, learning from home, learning differently. So we appreciate you allowing us to be a part of that. Thirdly, I'd like to thank the students. Without you guys tuning in today, the program would not be able to take place. So I'm excited to see those questions you have. And if you do have a question or you're viewing this program live on Facebook today, go ahead and put your name, your school, and ask your question in the comment section below. And we'll do our best to see if we can get that question in as part of the program. So today, we are lucky and grateful to be joined by Kim Smith. Kim is in her 5th season in the NFL and her 3rd with the Tennessee Titans. Her primary responsibility is to assist in coordinating media coverage for the team, acting as a liaison for coaches and players with members of the local and national media. Among other duties, she assists with the Titans media guide and weekly in-season press releases, record and stat keeping, as well as contributing to the team's social media channels. Smith, she is a graduate of the University of Rhode Island, previously spent time with the Detroit Lions, Tampa Bay Bucks, and the New York Giants. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest today, Ms. Kim Smith. Kim, thank you so much for being a part of the program today.
Hey, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, we appreciate you being part of the program. Like I said, the goal of this program is to learn so much about different careers in and around the NFL. When everybody thinks of careers in sports, they want to be a player, they want to be a coach, they want to be an athletic director, but there's so many different careers outside of that. So as the media relations coordinator for the Titans, kind of give us a 10,000-foot view on what your day-to-day role consists of and things you handle on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so basically, the way I typically explain my job in a nutshell, there's a lot of little things that go into it. But generally speaking, when you read a story in the paper, online, on your phone, and you see a quote from a player, or you're watching a game and after the game ends, you see an interview being done on the field with a player, all of that is organized through the PR department. So we will facilitate, check out requests that come in, see if they make sense for our player and our brand, and then try and match those up with the player schedules in order to execute the interviews. And then the other main facet of PR in the NFL is the records, the stats, and the facts. We are basically the information center of the team. So we're responsible for knowing things and conveying that information to the appropriate parties.
I think that's super important today, especially with how people take in the game, whether it's through, their TV, whether it's fantasy football, whether it's, looking into the history of the game. Us here at the Hall of Fame, we really love the history side of that game. So the stat side is a super important part of your job. And, you kind of give us the day-to-day there. But the question we like to focus on is you have to have a passion for what you do. And or you're really having a job. Because if you really love what you do, you don't work. You know, you love getting up each day, going into work. You know, now working from home. What is the thing you love the most about your job?
No, that's a great question. Everything, like you said, is a major part of it. Being passionate about what you're doing, bringing energy to work every day, because sports are not a 9 to 5. You're not going to have weekends off in season, and you're not typically going to be out in time to go to happy hour. It's a lot. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of time. So I would say the most important part of that to me, or a very important part of that to me, is winning. Winning is the best. There's no feeling like winning, just knowing that everything you had been preparing for Monday through Saturday paid off. It's a rewarding feeling.
And I say the Titans right now haven't had a problem with that. 5-0 going into a big matchup this week with the Steelers,
Yep.
also 5-0. So you say winning definitely helps the cause. So I can figure that the feeling there in Nashville, it has got to be at an all-time high right now.
Yeah, it's electric. It's a lot of fun.
You know, we look at careers in sports, and, you know, some people when they're growing up, you know, even when they're young, they have that one thing they want to do in their life. And, you know, they set out to strive for that goal. But a lot of people, when they get to high school, even college, really don't have that set foundation on what they want to do. So if you're talking to a student in high school who might be tuning in today, who, you know, who has a passion for sports, know that their career might not go past high school or college if they're an athlete or they're playing, but they love to be involved in sports. What would your advice be to that high school student who's trying to find that niche and what they really like to do to ultimately set themselves up for life down the road?
Yeah, no doubt. That's a great question. Personally speaking, I was always an athlete. Sports were always what made sense to me. They were where I was comfortable being, talking about, discussing. And so I knew pretty early on that I needed to do something in sports in order to feel happy every day. And so I would say if you're not, a 5-star athlete the way I was not, something that's important, I think, when you get into college is to take classes of a wide range of topics. My mom was actually an academic advisor in college, and she always brought home the point of, you might not know what you're, interested in until you know what you're not interested in. So if you can take, random classes, even if they sound a little out there, like, they might open up a door for you that you didn't know you wanted to go through.
I think that's super important. You know, that's something, you know, I've said before, is that when I was in college and high school, I tried to involve myself in as much as I could related to sports. One, to find, you know, that passion that you have, but two, and even more importantly, you know, try to find what I didn't like.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I didn't like sales, and to say that and work in sports is kind of weird, but I did not like sales. I did not want to have a path that included that side of sports. So I think both are very, very equally important. You talk about taking those classes and the importance of those experiences. So kind of a two-part question. One, where did you attend college, and what were some of the activities you were involved in? And two, what was your major? And then did you have any internships or experiences like that kind of led you the path where you are today?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Rhode Island, close to home. I'm originally from Long Island. And I initially entered college as a communications major. I then switched to majoring in PR. The program was kind of in its infancy when I was there, but I was, a lot of the classes were pretty similar for a comm major compared to a PR major. And while I was in college, I did 3 unpaid internships that really gave me some great real world experience. They were not paid, which was not ideal, but they were definitely invaluable experiences. And kind of like how we were saying, you don't know what you want until you know what you don't want. The first internship I held was with an ESPN radio station in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And that exposed me to a lot. I was in sales, I was in marketing, I was in production, broadcasting, a little bit of event planning, as well as being on the media side, covering the teams in the area. So really got to be exposed to a lot. And kind of like how you said, I learned quickly, like, sales was not for me. So from there, I was able to, really hone in on the communications and the PR aspect, which were the 2 following internships that I did with the Boston Bruins AHL affiliate, the Providence Bruins there in Rhode Island, as well as a PR firm, Reading Communications.
So you take all those experiences, and with those experiences come meeting so many different people, especially in those type of internships where you're doing a little bit and piece of everything within the organization. You know, it was stressed to me. I'm sure it's stressed to students in college today how important it is to build relationships and create a network and start networking with individuals in any career path that you want to get into. So can you kind of echo how important it is to network, even in the career that you're in today, or even as a young professional? And then how more important it is for those college students to kind of start to build that network that they have.
Yeah, no doubt. Networking is something that was stressed to me hard in college through internships. But the funny thing about networking is I feel like no one really ever explained how to do it, if that makes sense. Like I think the picture in my mind, I always pictured business suits or, like work functions where you could network, but really networking can take place in a lot of different ways. Like we said, it's the relationship building, maintaining, creating. So even something as simple as just reaching out to someone, trying to strike up a conversation, trying to learn from them. It doesn't always need to be, I think, as black and white as you might picture it in your mind.
Oh, absolutely. And I think even something like this today for all of our students tuning in, and we'll touch on, you know, how to start networking and how to reach out and contact. But we've got your information there in the comment section pinned there. So if you're watching and you want to connect with Kim or with us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the information's there, and we'll touch on that here a little bit down the road. So you get that job, you network, you build the relationships, you create those relationships that lead you into the NFL. And like you said, you know, in a relatively short professional career, you've been with, you know, 4 different NFL teams. And it kind of stresses the importance of it. It's okay to move around. You
Yeah.
know, for me, luckily, I grew up 20 minutes away from where I'm sitting right today, and got a job 20 minutes from home. So I'm lucky in that aspect. But you see a lot of people especially in sports that work all over the country. Was that a goal of yours to try and experience so many different places in the country, or was it like, you know, I have an idea what I want to do, I like this job, but I'm still going to continue to look till I find that exact position I really enjoy?
Yeah, no doubt. Sports are funny in that sense because pretty much everyone you work with is a transplant. Like all of my coworkers are from somewhere else. Even you look at a football team, like guys are getting drafted from all over the country. So it's definitely a like melting pot of people. Um, I don't think my goal necessarily was to go live in different cities, but I also understood it came with the territory. I also understood sometimes you have to go where the opportunity is. And for me, that led me to first Rhode Island with school, and then Detroit with the Lions, Tampa with the Buccaneers, and now here in Nashville.
You've experienced, you know, the cold, the warm, the
Yeah.
Midwest. You've got it all experienced there. So, you know, you get into your career, and it's not like, all right, I got a job, I'm set, I don't have to learn anymore. You continue to learn every day once you're in your career. So what are some ways that you've continued to better yourself to make yourself the best media relations coordinator that you can be day in and day out with your career where you are today?
Yeah, so I am very fortunate to work in the department that I work in. The three members of the department that I'm in have been in the NFL forever. Our director Robbie has been with the team since 1999 when it came to Nashville. So there's not a lot that those three haven't seen. Um, so I find myself sometimes just learning so much from our daily conversations where we're planning out details and logistics. They've seen a lot, they've been through a lot, they know a lot. So I think the most important part of any career in any industry is, always being willing to learn and always viewing each day as an opportunity to learn something. I myself, I'm kind of a nosy person, so I like to ask a lot of questions and I like to know a lot of things. And sometimes, you know, that's really the way to go. Like you have to know and be prepared for the fact that you might not know everything. So there's always something that somebody can teach you or that you can learn.
Absolutely. And that goes for any career, not just a career in sports, or not just for people who are relatively, you know, new in their career. There is something, and especially with today with technology, using Zoom like it is today, and, you know, in the climate that we're in, everybody is using this type of technology, and it just opens so many doors. to continue to learn and grow, and not only just your main responsibilities, but some of the responsibilities you have outside of that main job responsibility. And we talk about you dabble a little bit in social media with the Tennessee Titans. One of the questions we have is how do you keep a social media account on organizations like the Titans professional, but still engaging and be able to engage with the fans and kind of have a little bit of fun that creates that great platform on social media?
Yeah, so we have two great social media people for the Titans, Nate and Jordan, who do a phenomenal job at balancing the professionalism of the brand while also being playful. Because at the end of the day, social media is an app we can all have on our phones. Like, it's not exclusive to being in the NFL. So my contributions to them are fairly limited compared to what they handle. Helping contribute to the Snapchat account, which might then get pulled and put on the Instagram account. Something I think that's interesting about blending PR with social media is that my job, it's literally in the job title, is relations. So I'm there to have relationships with various different people in order to meet our common goals and get things done for the brand. And so the blend of PR and social is that I'm able to, maybe play with the guys a little bit more to get a fun video that might, do well on social media because they're comfortable with me and they know who I am. So I definitely add to the Snapchat, but they are the masterminds behind that.
We talk about social media and the importance it is for an organization, but everybody, I would say 60, 70, 80% of everybody in the world today has some sort of social media platform. For somebody in high school and college that has that platform, what are some advices that you would have to them to keep it professional? Because I can say from a hiring standpoint, if you turn a resume in and we're going to have an interview with you, that's the first thing I'm going to look at is your social media and what you're tweeting, what you're putting on Instagram, Facebook, what you're putting on there. So how important it is, and what are some piece of his advice that you would give high school and college students on how to keep their account fun, but still at a professional level?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, another thing that was certainly stressed very hard in college. Working with the media, in the media, around the media, Twitter is part of our daily lives. If you're gearing towards a career in sports, like, Twitter is pretty much unavoidable. It hasn't seemed to be slowing down at all either. So it's definitely relevant. And honestly, it's where a lot of people get their news now, with, hard newspapers not being as relevant as they were, when I was growing up. So I think having social media, it's important. And so I know that in college, I had a Twitter account, just to chirp back and forth with my friends, retweet dumb videos, probably the same way every college kid did. But once I started interning, and firsthand got to experience the importance of a site like Twitter, I actually deleted my old account and made a whole brand new one. And that's the one that I use now, where it's really just there to be relevant to my job and what I want and to help me meet my goals. So I wouldn't say that I'm a voice or really a personality on social media. My job is really, I use Twitter in my job to help inform people, inform media, as a resource, especially now with restrictions that COVID have placed. Communication, you have to put a little bit more extra effort into making sure that everything that you need to say or what you need to be heard is heard. So I utilize Twitter a little bit more this year, probably, than I have in previous years. But generally speaking, for students, I would say just be aware of yourself and what you post. You can have fun with your social media accounts, but everything you post, you should look at with the perspective of, would I be proud of this if my employer saw it? And if you're on the fence about it, don't do it.
Yep, that I can definitely speak from experience on that one. That you have, because you are, you can't just put tweets or my own opinion in your bio and you're good to go. There's so much more that goes into that. And you mentioned COVID, and I think nice little segue in here. And you mentioned how much it has changed. So how much has the pandemic affected your career and the things you do on a day-to-day basis? And how have you had to learn to adjust to incorporate some of those new things you have to do?
Yeah, a great question. I mean, COVID has changed everything for us. Even just going back to the draft, I mean, the draft was done entirely virtual. You had camera setups in the homes of head coaches and GMs, which if anyone had pitched that idea any other year, it would have been crazy.
Yep.
So COVID has made things, I think for fans, it probably looks the same. You're still watching games, you're still hearing from the players, your news stories are still out there, but on the back end, I think it's forced every PR professional in the league to get creative. The simple tasks that we do each day, it now requires twice the amount of thought, twice the amount of planning, maybe even more than that. So we're all well versed in Zoom. A lot of meetings are done on Zoom. All of our press conferences are done virtually. Nothing is done in person anymore. So it's an adjustment. It's definitely an adjustment, but we're making it work so far.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about social media, and we talked about your job. You obviously work with the players and the coaches a lot, and part of our job here at the Hall of Fame, like I mentioned at the beginning, is to preserve the history of the game. And we preserve the history of all those great legends that came before the current players today, all of our Hall of Famers, but we're also preserving some of the players that are currently in the league. One of those being somebody that threw a stiff arm a couple weeks ago against the Bills running back Derrick Henry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it out to our museum, to Nathan Martin, who's the youth and education coordinator here at the Hall of Fame, who is in front of a special artifact pertaining to that said running back. So Nathan, you there?
Yeah, Jake, thanks for sending it out here. And like he was saying, I'm in our Pro Football Today gallery, and this gallery is full of stuff from the stars in the NFL today. Whether it's a guy like Patrick Mahomes, it's a guy like Lamar Jackson, or the guy I'm standing next to, his jersey, Mr. Derrick Henry. And this jersey's here because in week 14 of the 2018 season, wearing this jersey with the grass stains and everything, Derrick Henry stiff-armed his way to a 99-yard touchdown run. This tied the NFL record for the longest run in a game, and in the same game, he set the franchise record for the most rushing yards in a single game for any Tennessee Titans player. And since we're in front of this Derrick Henry jersey, now he's making it a habit of these 90-yard plus touchdown runs. Our question for you, Kim, as the media relations coordinator, when you see something like this, are you immediately thinking like, oh, shoot, this might be a franchise record or an NFL record? Are you thinking, how close is it to a game record maybe now that he's got this 90 yards added onto his total? Or are you just sitting back and enjoying it as a Tennessee Titans fan? How do you handle these moments during the game?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And side note, I actually mailed you guys that jersey. I was terrified while I had it. I'm like, I don't want to let this thing out of my sight. So I think that's a good question. A lot of times I actually get asked, like, what do you do during games? Like, are you just sitting back and watching? How does that work? And I think when you work in PR, you start to watch games with statistical trends in mind. That's something that I'm working on and trying to improve each game. And so the fun thing about having a back like Derrick is that every time we're backed up, within the 5-yard line, like we're like, all right, let's get it, 99 yards, he's going to the house again. But you even saw that on Sunday. He had a 94-yard rush in the game, and he's just killing it. So I think you watch with those trends in mind. Like, I have live stats up during every game, and I'm watching how close, he's getting to another 100-yard game, or how close Ryan's getting to a 300-yard passing game, or AJ 100-yard receiving game. So you keep those things in mind. You have a few ideas prepared ahead of the game of like what milestones could be reached, how close, player X is to breaking, whatever stat for his career. So you definitely keep those things in mind as you watch the game.
Related to that jersey, we got a question here on Facebook. This is from Ryan, who is a student at James Madison University. He has said, is there any common avenues to enter the professional football career field, either specific or non-specific to media? And the two-parter is, Derrick Henry as scary as in person as he looks on TV?
Derrick is the best. He is definitely a massive human being. So I will say he's very large in person, but he's a ton of fun to work with. He's a really great person inside and out. So as far as avenues to get in the NFL, I think a common thread that I've seen that I personally I did not partake in is people tend to go to larger schools, which may have a larger program that has, more connections. But I think that's not, that's not something to get discouraged by if you aren't going to an Alabama or a Clemson. Like, I went to the University of Rhode Island. Like, our football program, when I was there, we didn't win a lot of games. So we were not, in the headlines. We were not in the news. And just speaking, the state of Rhode Island doesn't have, professional teams. There's no NFL team in Rhode Island. So I think as long as you are personally determined to get where you want to get, you're going to find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And so I didn't, everything internship wise, game day, job wise, I got on my own just by knocking on some doors.
I think that's a super important part. Like we said, creating those relationships, but sometimes it takes, taking that step that might make you super nervous, or, kind of trying to break out of your shell. Another question here on Facebook. This is from Armand, who is a junior at Brown University over there in Providence. He wants to know what kind of opportunities are there in the NFL regarding data analytics. And we know the data side of football, we've heard it in baseball for forever, but it's starting to become super important in the game of football. Mike Vrabel comes from that Bill Belichick tree, and he's, taking penalties on purpose or taking delay of games just because he knows the ins and outs of the rules and the analytics that go behind it. So one, I guess, from your side of things, or I guess first question is, are there opportunities? And I guess from your side of things, how do you, work with somebody in that department, to further the Titans brand?
Yeah, I think that as the industry itself shifts towards a more, being in a more digital space, you also see that with coaching, with analytics. Analytics roles are definitely, I would say, increasing around the league. And I think even broadcasters have started to catch on to that trend where, last week we played the Texans and they went for a 2-point conversion. And I think prior to kicking it, statistically, they checked and it was like a 98% chance they would get it and 98% chance they would still win, even if they didn't. It was something, statistically that looked pretty good. But I would say that there's a shift towards using analytics a little bit more. That's probably a question or a role that's affiliated with the coaching staff more so than the PR department. We personally don't have anyone with the quote unquote title, analyst, coaching analyst, anything like that. I think there are teams that do. I want to say the Eagles have someone of that capacity, and the Packers might as well. But I think that the coaching staff collectively, they share those responsibilities, and so it's something that we keep in mind. And I think it's expanding. Those types of roles are expanding around the league.
Speaking about Coach Vrabel, holds a special place in our heart here in Ohio as a former Ohio State Buckeye, Super Bowl champion, you name it. Great head coach, but you really look at him when he's, you see the videos of him at practice or him sprinting, warming up before games. Definitely an intense coach. For a coach that is intense and has a great relationship with the players, how important that is to the organization as a whole, and you kind of see a trickle down effect within the whole organization.
Oh yeah, I mean the Titans organization, I can't say enough good things about them. Between Vrabel, our general manager John Robinson, and our owner Amy Adams Strunk, the culture of this organization is phenomenal. And like you said, it's a trickle down effect where everyone is valued, everyone is heard, everyone is important, and we all respect each other's roles and are aware of what one another brings to the table. And so Vrabel is definitely high energy. He's a lot of fun to have as a coach. The guys love him. And like you said, Vrabel was a former player himself, so he can understand a lot of different roles. So he was, the rookie that was drafted, and then he was the older vet, and he's won Super Bowls, and he's caught touchdowns as a linebacker. So he's really got a great perspective to share with a lot of the team and a lot of the players. And so it's fun working there, and it's a fun environment to be in.
I got some more questions coming in on Facebook. We got two kind of related. We talked a little bit about COVID, and both of these kind of are along the same lines. One comes from Jesus, who's a senior at Temple University, and our other comes from Rohan, who is a junior back at Brown University as well. Just talk a little bit about how your leadership has changed, within the organization during the pandemic. And you mentioned a lot of how things are taking over video. And then everybody knows that, the Titans missed about a whole week of practice because of, everything that went on there within the organization and everybody having to work remotely, practice remotely, work from home. How were the team able to overcome those challenges? And is it something that you see just with the football side, or is that those tendencies reflected on the business and the marketing and the PR side as well?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, the leadership component of our organization, we have phenomenal leadership. Like I was just saying, starts at the top and really goes down through the whole organization. Our leadership council has done a great job of keeping us informed as far as where the team is, where the facility is, how we're going about implementing changes to keep us all healthy and safe during these bizarre times that we're living in. So leadership is definitely very strong for us, and I appreciate that. That's a really positive trait for an organization and for a club to have. And then the second part, yeah, we had our facility was shut down for a little bit there while we dealt with the issue that was at hand. And our guys are we have a team of, guys that believe in one another really hard. We don't use anything as an excuse. We're always going to adapt and find ways to get what we need to get done, despite the circumstances. So this team has definitely faced some adversity this season, but with Rabel leading it and leading the team, we know that we're always going to put in 110% effort to be prepared for what we're facing.
Got another question here on Facebook. And just a reminder, if you're watching us and you have a question, we've got some great ones so far, but go ahead, feel free to submit those. And like I said, we'll try our best to get them in as part of the program. But this question comes from Sonia, who's a MBA student, actually, at Baldwin Wallace University right here in Ohio. She wants to know, who were your mentors and how did they help you break into the NFL?
Yeah, good question. I think having a mentor in sports is something that really is only going to help you. And so I was fortunate. My first internship that I had, I worked under, his name's Eamon Reynolds, and he's now the director for the Detroit Lions PR. And he's only a couple years older than I am. So when I was interning there, I was 22 and 23. I think he was 27 at the time. But Eamon was great. I mean, Eamon had been an intern just a few years before. So he always said, I remember what it felt like to be in your position. And so I would ask Eamon probably 100 questions a day. Just kind of like how I was saying earlier, like the best way to learn is just to ask questions and make sure you're fully grasping, what you're being tasked to do. And Eamon is still somebody that I rely on now. I'll still bounce ideas off him or reach out to him to get his opinion or his take on something. And I think that's never been more true than this year as we're dealing with COVID. Like I was saying, it's forced everyone in PR around the league to really get creative with how we go about simple things. Like I definitely reach out to and rely on a lot of my counterparts around the league for their opinion, how they're going about things, what worked for them, what didn't. And so Eamon is someone that I still rely on today.
And, it goes back to the whole idea about building relationships. And, if you ever leave an organization or you move on to another position, those relationships don't go away. And I think it goes to show how important, those are. We talk a lot about the game of football, and, the game of football itself can teach so much. And I think we've seen that over the past month with everything that's been going on. So, here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we're obviously unapologetically football. And we think the game of football can teach so many excellent life lessons that you can use to become a Hall of Famer, but you can also use to become a better mom, dad, son, brother, whatever it might be. So the question is, how do you think the game of football teaches those about their life, whether they play it, they coach it, they watch it on TV, they play fantasy football, whatever it might be? What does the game of football teach everybody who has a hand in the game somehow?
Yeah, no doubt. Football is fascinating. Like it's really just sociologically, there's so many different aspects and components of it that you can study and learn from. And one thing that has always stuck out to me as far as press conferences that I've been a part of since being with the Titans is when Arthur Smith, our offensive coordinator, when we brought him out for his press conference where we were introducing him as our OC, he gave us a quote that said how football is so fascinating because it brings together people from every different background for a common goal. And that is so incredibly true. Like how I was saying that all my coworkers are from different places and football is just a mesh of those people is the same concept. Like you might have someone who grew up, in the city who lines up next to someone who grew up on a farm. So very different backgrounds, but you're all working towards a common goal. And not to be corny, but there's something that's very beautiful about that because it teaches you how to coexist and cooperate with people who are very different from you. And even if you face, adversity in a personal relationship, you have to put that aside because you still need to work to the greater good of the team. And so there's a lot of lessons that you can take away from being in sports, playing sports, or even just watching sports. It's everyone has a job to do and everyone needs to do their job or the collective won't work.
And I think a lot of those lessons can be applied to the game. But like we said, the game, it can be applied to, showing up to the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday throughout the entire year. And it leads to a more combined, a more, cohesive unit, to use football terminology. It helps move the ball forward, whether that be getting an event planned or getting a project done when you're in the office. So I think that's a huge key to success. But what are some other keys to success in your opinion, when it comes to either obtaining a career in sports or continuing to better yourself in your current, role that you're in?
Yeah, something that I really try to bring and try to focus on is energy. And that rings true whether you're trying to get a job or just work on, improving yourself in your career. Bringing energy is like imperative. Like it's just you need to have passion in what you're doing during the day or you're going to get burnt out and you're probably not going to feel very confident in the work that you're producing. So bringing forth your energy, be it a simple task or a complicated one, the attitude and how you present yourself to what you're facing is crucial and it's critical.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, it all goes to continuing to better yourself in your day-to-day job and during your typical workday, whether it's with a pandemic, without a pandemic, during a bye week, Monday night game, Thursday night game, whatever it might be. Looking at the workday and things you do on a typical day. Now, let's block everything out. Typical season, typical NFL game day. What does your work week look like? And then what is your game day like? What are the hours like? What are the things you're doing and you are specifically in charge of when it comes to the work week then leading up to game day?
Yeah. So in season, I joke that I know what day it is, what day of the week it is by what I'm doing that day. So Monday through Friday, there's a lot of common threads in what a PR department does. So you're going to have your press conferences, you'll have your quarterback available, your running back available, your coordinators available. You'll have your open locker room in a normal year. You'll have practice that you need to attend and be there to be a presence with the media. So those are common things that every PR department around the league will do every day during the week. But then there'll be differences depending on the day. So like Monday for a PR department for us here, that's our release day. So that's when we put together, a super, super chunk packet that has all of our records, stats, facts, trends, player bios, everything that the local, national, and broadcast media need to do their job efficiently. So that's an example of how, one day looks like the others, but it's a little bit different in and of itself. And so for game days, it's a long day. It's, for here, we're in central time. So it's a noon kick. So we're at the stadium by 8 o'clock in the morning. And, it's kind of controlled chaos where you make a plan for game day on how you're going to go about the things that you need to do and how you're going to get it done, but then just plan for, 10 other things to get thrown in the mix and you're running around and, it's chaos, but it's so much fun. There are some common things that you do every game day as far as getting the media set up with their credentials and their photo vests and everything that they need to do their job effectively. As well as something that I've been doing this year is our inactives and our lineup changes sheets. So 90 minutes before every kick, the team or every team has to announce which players are inactive for that game. And so that's something that I've been handling this year as far as disseminating that information to our media. And that kind of goes back to how I said I'm using Twitter a lot more this year. So we're obviously trying to social distance in our press box. So in order to make sure that the media is aware of that information, I'll usually tweet that out as well.
So for all of you fantasy football players out there, Kim is the one that you get those alerts on your app 90 minutes before kickoff when your starting wide receiver is a sudden late scratch and you got to go to the waiver wire and pick somebody up there last second. But it is cool to see, what a game day looks like, because it truly is different for everybody, whether it's, operations side, a coach side, equipment side, you're all there doing, working towards that same goal like we talked about. But just like in the huddle, everybody has their own piece of the puzzle that they have to do. If you're an offensive lineman, you block. If you're the running back, you run the ball, you catch passes. Just like, when you look at the business side, everybody kind of has their specific job that they do. We got another question here from Facebook. This is from Laura. She goes, what advice would you have specifically for women who are interested in working in sports, which are usually a male dominated, career path?
Yes, great question. Yeah, I mean, I could go on forever about this, but, being a woman in sports presents an entirely different set of challenges and obstacles, I think, than our male counterparts face. I think you're always going to have people that doubt what you're capable of and what you can handle. And there's nothing that's more pleasurable than showing that you can do exactly what they're trying to say you can't. And so I would say for a female, just from personal experience, I think you have to, or you probably will, develop need-based resiliency. And so you're going to be told no 100 times probably before you're told yes. And I think a key to finding success is being an advocate for yourself. Um, no one has, your interests at heart more than yourself. And so if you know that you might deserve something that you're seeing a male counterpart get, and you could do it equally as well, don't be afraid to speak up for yourself.
I think they're all great points. And I think it goes, like you said, across all sports. And, you've seen a lot of more female owners taking ownership of teams. That list continues to grow. We do a presentation as part of our educational programming on women in the NFL, and the number of women who have had an impact on the game that you don't even think about until you dive in and do the research. The game of football truly wouldn't be what it is today, without the women who have laid their impact on the game of football. A cool part about your job is you mentioned, the number of things you get to have your hand in. So obviously you've gotten to be a part of so many different events and times and games throughout your NFL career. Is there a moment or a specific game event that sticks out to you as kind of your favorite moment that you've been able to be a part of?
Oh yeah. I would say that's a two-part answer for me. The first would be hosting a draft in Nashville last year. Like, that was just the most insane, I think, 3-day period I've ever had in my entire life. Like, it was record-breaking number of people came to it. We were over 600,000 people packed out onto Lower Broadway. Our stage was set up, and just like the buzz in this city was just unbelievable. And I think we're slated to have the draft again soon. So that's going to be something that I'll look forward to for sure. And then this past year, we actually made it to the AFC Championship. So I'd just say collectively, the last couple weeks of our season was a blast. Like, week 17, we played on the road at Houston. Derek secured the rushing title. We secured a playoff berth. And then we went to New England, beat the Patriots, went to Baltimore, beat the Ravens, went to Kansas City for the AFC Championship, and didn't come out there with the outcome we wanted. But just that couple weeks span was just, every day was a blast, and it was so much fun. And hopefully we're on pace to have a similar run this year as well.
Well, you're 5-0 so far, so hopefully that continues. Got time for a few more questions here. We mentioned at the beginning the importance of networking and how important it is to start to build those relationships, no matter if you're a high school student, college student, or beyond. So I guess the question being is, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that? And then, also, if anybody wants to get into contact with anybody in the field of sports, what do you think are the best ways for them to reach out and advice on doing so?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I try to always check those messages as frequently as I can. I admittedly need to do better with that. But otherwise, email is always a good method of communicating with anybody around the league. And I know that when I was trying to still get in the industry, get a foot in the door, meet whoever I could, email was the method that I went about trying to do that. Sending out notes to, if there's a team directory online and you see there's 4 people in the PR department, send a note to all of them. Just don't be afraid to reach out, basically, is a lesson that I learned.
And then, my last question we have for you today is, we've talked about so many different things from, what you do on a day-to-day basis to advice you would give students of all ages, young professionals. If you could sum up everything that we've talked about today and leave everybody tuning in today, all the folks we have watching on Facebook, with one piece of advice, what would that one culminating piece of advice be that you want everybody to take away today?
I would say just believe in yourself. That sounds so corny, but I know that, like, personally, when I was trying to find a job, I was told no 100 times before I was finally told yes. So the capacity and the capability for you to know that this is where you belong and to be able to pick yourself up when you don't get the outcome right away that you want is critical. And knowing that you are going to get where you want to get eventually, even if it's, through your plan B method or your plan C method, that's an important skill to have and to know, is just believing that you are able to get where you want to get.
Looks like we had a little bit of technical issues there. Your screen froze on us, but we can still hear you. And I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. A great piece of advice to leave everybody with today. So, Kim, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. As I mentioned at the beginning, football jobs in the NFL aren't just, an in-season job. They're a 365-day-a-year job, and there's so much work that goes into that. So thank you so much for everything you do for the game of football, and you do with the Titans organization. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time today. I know during a super busy week as you're leading up to a super important game with the Steelers. Before we leave everybody today, just some final reminders. Make sure you're tuning in to all the social media channels here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it might be. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, see all the great content we have coming out. If you're a podcast listener, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, The Mission, featuring Jameer Howerton, great coworker of mine. In fact, we are lucky enough to have Jameer as our special guest next week, Friday, October 30th, as part of this Before the Snap series. So make sure you subscribe, listen to that podcast, tune in, hear from Jameer, and you'll get to hear from him next week right here on Before the Snap. So as I said at the beginning, the game of football isn't what it is today without everybody who have an influence on the game. So for everybody watching today, know that Kim has had an influence on the game of football, and it's been super important to the whole game of football as a whole, specifically the Tennessee Titans. So for myself, all of our youth education team, Jerry, Nathan, everybody here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, thank you so much for tuning in today. And make sure you tune in next week when we have Jameer Howerton as our special guest right here on Facebook Live from our Before the Snap series. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.